Hey Creagears, Robo here and welcome back to a new episode in our Custom Amiibo month themed around finishing the Salmon Run boss amiibos. In this video we're going to be making the next boss on our list, the Goldie. Oh, hey Mr Grizz, and yeah, you're right on that. It's because we got another episode already in the works for next Wednesday. We originally wanted to make another 2-in-1 episode just like we did for the Salmon Run worker and the basket. But during editing we saw that this video would have probably been around 35 minutes.
Sure.
But that's enough talking for now, let's get started! Like with most customs, we start with a rough aluminium base for the figure. This we covered with a layer of epoxy sculpt to make the base of the Goldie. The next thing we added was a little triangle to make the lower jaw of the salmonid. Using some silicone tools we smoothed the transition onto the main body and made sure the lips went over the lower jaw. Then we made some snakes of clay to make 3 fat rolls that the Goldie has on the model. Then pressing those into the rest of the body. Next we made a very thin snake of clay and placed this just behind the face of the Goldie to make the gills and its crown-like shape. And as with the rest, we made sure this was smoothed into the body for a better sculpt. Then for a big part of this creature, its larger scales. Instead of the usual method of using a stamp we made from some aluminium wire, we had to make some actual scales to make it as game accurate as we could. So for the next minutes of our time, we had to cut some pieces of clay, roll those into balls and layer by layer build up the scales of the Goldie. After all scales were attached, we could start on the next part, the tail. This part isn't anything special, just again making a half circle out of clay, then pressing the middle to make a thicker edge, and then we cut some lines into the thinner part. But what the Goldie does have are some points at the end of the thinner part. So after getting a piece of parchment paper for storage, we can cut the pattern into the tail. And while we're already working on one fin, why not also add the other two? So after making 2 similar balls of clay, I pressed and shaped them into the fins of the salmonid and added the texture lines. Then both were added to the body. Then the final body parts to add were the eyes. So after pressing some holes with one of my clay tools, I got to make 2 balls of clay again and lightly press those into these holes. And with all of those parts done, we could finally give the Goldie its distinctive robes. Starting with a stretched out triangle that I placed around the left fin and made curl down to the bottom of the figure. Then I used a knife tool to make the folds of the fabric, before enlarging those with a pointed silicone tool. This was then repeated for the back side of the robes. Finally, I got to use the last of my clay to make 2 rectangles to act as the fabric in between the first pieces of the robes, to make it seem like it's going all around the Goldie's body. Then the same technique was also used to make the folds into those pieces, as well as pressing the edges lower where they meet the front pieces with a flat silicone tool, to create the illusion that there are different layers in the robes. Then we just had to go over the figure one more time to perfect the sculpt. But unlike the flipper flopper from last week, we wanted to add the tail while the glue was still willing. So for this, we had to get a little creative with the bamboo skewer handle, some hot glue, and the PVC mold we had for the tail. Then we can make the weapon of the Goldie, a large frying pan. Using some EVA foam for a 15mm circle and a strip of 5mm foam to make the edge with some super glue and accelerant for the base of the pan. Once that was all done, all we had to do was add the handle made from a coffee stirring stick, and that was done. But as soon as that was completed, we could start on the decorations of the base. For our custom, we wanted to combine the two appearances of the Goldie. One with the frying pan in the hand from the fog waves, and by having the salmon on top of a geyser to also include the Goldie sinking waves. So let's make the geyser next. Starting with the edge using some 6mm plywood. Then making a circle of 40mm with a 35mm inner circle. Then the larger circle is cut out with the jigsaw. Next, the edge is sanded back until a chamfer is made between the edge of the 40mm cut to the 35mm line. Then, using a sharp pencil, the inside of the ring is traced onto some EVA foam and cut and glued onto the ring. Then some decorative triangles are also cut and glued equally along the ring for all 4 pieces. Next, the geyser is glued onto the base for some more strength, before we can drill and sand the holes of the grid into the foam. Once that's done, we can work on the geyser itself, starting again from some plastic packaging as a base. This is then cut and glued around a 32mm PVC pipe to act as a base. And to make sure the glue doesn't warp too much, we press it against some more parchment paper for a flat edge. Then, same as the flipper flopper, we add the wild water texture with a lot of hot glue while placing it into another mold piece to make sure the heat doesn't warp the plastic too much. Next, we make 2 different kinds of splashes to place on top of the geyser. One with some long fin splashes, and one with some shorter, stumpier splashes. Then, after loosening them with some water, we can remove them from the parchment paper and begin shaping them a bit. But carefully using the heat gun and a random cover of a glue container I found, I shaped the splashes to make the base stretch upwards and then make the ends face downward. This will make it seem like the water is being pushed up with a lot of force and then falling back down again. With all of those parts done, we can do some painting. Starting with a black base for the base of the geyser. But for the Goldie itself, we use some gloss black spray paint. Then we can go back to the pan with a coating of chainmail silver. same as the base of the geyser. But leaving the white triangles alone, keep a nice base for the green later on. And after the ring is completely covered, we can almost clean the brush for some dry brushing on the grid. Then we can use some empty gold spray paint for the base of the Goldie. Just look at that shine. Next we can also mix a bit of the white with some mummy's robes to cover the, well, robes. And the same white is then also mixed to make a very light olive green for the belly of the Goldie and also for its eyes. While that dries, we can also go and carefully freehand the salmonid insignia on the back of the frying pan with some white. And while we have the white out, why not also use it for the tops of the robes to create a little bit more depth between the fabric. And to also add to the inside of the mouth to act as a base for some red lighter. Then we can use a dark brown for the real ends of the fins. And also later on for the end of the snout. Finally, we mix a darker green with some water to make a green wash that we can then apply between the scales of the Goldie for a nice old look full of algae. And as the last thing, we add the eyes with some red for the iris and some black for the pupil. Next, we can finish this project by first gluing the frying pan into its place within its right fin. Then, off camera, we had already made the electronic circuit for the LEDs of this custom, comprising of 4 green LEDs, 3 yellow ones, and a switch and a coin battery. Now we get to squeeze the yellow LEDs in place at the end of the geyser using our tweezers. But at last we got it in place, and so we can glue the Goldie into its rightful place on top of the geyser. Then we can finally add the transparent green paint to the plastic and the hot glue. Leaving the base of the Goldie unpainted to get more of the yellow shine that you will see in game when you find the Goldie. And as a real final thing, we could add gloss varnish to the water and the skin of the salmonid. And with that, we can finally announce the Splatoon 3 Next Wave Goldie Custom Face. What's going on, Mr. Grizz? Fine, but I'll just 3D print one with the resin printer. Is that okay? Hey Creagears, Rob here, and we hope you enjoyed this Goldie Custom Amiibo. So, that's another one done from our great list of Salmon Run boss Amiibos. Now, we just got 4 more to go. But, saying it out loud, it does sound like we better get to work to have that other one finished by this Wednesday. So, we hope you will consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell to make sure you will get a notification when that brand new video drops. But that's going to be all from us for now. Keep those great gears turning, and we will see you guys soon.